Good day everyone. I am Farhana Amdalgan and I'll be discussing about Autism Spectrum. Now, kasunod siya nito ng neurodevelopmental disorder, ibig sabihin may kinalaman siya sa development ng utak and behavior ng isang tao. So, we have diagnostic criteria. Now, we have first criteria is kailangan may persistent na difficulties sa social communication and social interactions. So, may three main points dito. Yung social emotional reciprocity is nahihirapan sila sa back and forth conversation. Like, for instance, hindi sila madalas nag-share ng interest or emotions. Or minsan, hindi sila nakaka-initiate ng interaction. Like kapag tinanong mo sila is short answer lang tapos hindi na magtatanong ulit. And second is we have non-verbal communication problems tulad ng eye contact, gestures, o facial expressions. Like for instance, kahit nakasmile ka and hindi nila ma-interpret na happy ka or hindi sila gumagamit ng hand gestures habang nag-explain. Third is difficulty in relationships. So, nahihirapan sila makipag-adjust sa social situations or makipag-friends. Like for instance, minsan wala silang interest sa peers or hindi sila nakikisali sa group play. Now we have restricted and repetitive behaviors. So, other than social difficulties is kailangan may at least two sa mga repetitive or restricted behaviors. We have a stereotyped or repetitive movement speech like paulit-ulit na galaw or pag-line up ng toys or yung inuulit mo yung naririnig na salita. And two is insistence on sameness. So, gusto nila yung routine, ayaw nila ng changes. Like yung may mga tao talagang ganyan. Like for instance, lagi nilang gustong dumaan sa parehong route or kumain ng parehong pagkain araw-araw. Like sometimes ganyan talaga ako. Pero I don't know. So, we have fixated interest na like sobrang intense or specific ang interest nila. 'Di ba may mga taong masyadong obsessed sa isang topic like for example like movies or books or music, masyado silang obsessed sa mga ganyan. Lastly is hyper. Yung sobrang reaction or walang reaction sa sounds, textures, or lights, etc. Like for instance, sobrang na-affect or naapektuhan sa maingay na lugar or wala silang reaction or hindi sila sensitive kahit na masaktan, ganun. We also have early development. Yung early development is yung symptoms, di ba, usually lumalabas pa lang sa early childhood ng bata. So, kahit minsan hindi agad napapansin is hanggat hindi lumalaki yung social demands. So, sa functional impairment is dapat yung symptoms, di ba, is nagkukos iyan siya ng malaking impact sa daily life tulad ng sa school, works, or relationships. And hindi dapat ma-explain ng ibang disorder lang tulad ng intellectual disability, pero pwedeng mag-coexist. So, meron tayong severity levels up to 1 to 3. Level 1 is requiring support. So, may difficulties pero nakakapag-communicate pa rin. Like for instance, nakapagsalita ng sentences pero hirap makipag-friends. May mga tao talagang ganyan. So, sa level 2 is substantial support. So, mas obvious yung social and behavior difficulties na kahit may help, kahit may tulong sa iba, is nahihirapan pa rin sila. Sa level 3 is very substantial na yan siya. Like, konti lang magsalita, limited yung interaction nila, sobrang hirap sila mag-adjust like sa changes. So, dito naman tayo sa core features of ASD. We have criterion A and criterion B. So, criterion A is yan yung may mga taong kilala natin na sobrang hirap makisalamuha, sobrang hirap makipag-interact, hindi siya nakakasabay sa mga like conversation, and that could be a manifestation of criterion A. While sa criterion B naman is ito naman yung paulit-ulit yung ginagawa nila na sobrang fixated yung interest. Sa criterion A is we have social emotional reciprocity. Like for instance, yung bata is hindi siya nagipaglaro, hindi siya nag-share ng toys, or hindi rin hindi siya nag-initiate na makipag-usap sa iba. So while sa adults is nahihirapan silang makisabay sa conversation, lalo na kapag complicated yung cues like irony, like sarcasms or jokes. Hindi sila nakakasabay sa ganyan. While we have non-verbal, yung non-verbal communication deficit is sobrang hina nila, wala masyadong eye contact, kakaiba yung paggamit nilang gestures or flat facial expressions. Like for instance, yung mga taong nagsasalita is hindi tumitingin sa kausap. Di ba may mga ganyan? Yung hindi makatingin sa kausap habang nagsasalita or hindi nag-a-adjust ng boses. So, it depends sa situation. While the developing and maintaining relationships is hirap sila makipag-friends or maintaining friendship kasi minsan is one-sided lang. For instance is like yung gusto nila makipag-friends pero ang basis lang is shared interest tulad ng cartoons or like movies, yung mga ganon. Hindi yung normal give and take na relationship. Like 'di ba may friend tayong mga always kinukwento yung mga favorite nilang movies, yung mga paulit-ulit yung kinukwento nilang topic over the same time, over and over ganun. That could be a subtle sign. Now we have a criterion B. Sa criterion B naman is we have stereotype movement or speech. Yan yung like for example, yan yung like hand flapping or yung mga bata na nila-line up nila yung mga toys nila. Di ba may mga ganyan? Or yung inuulit yung words na narinig. While the insistence on sameness and routines is yan yung galit or distress kapag may small changes. Di ba may mga ganyan na tao? Like kapag for instance rin is ibang route yung dinaanan nila na papunta sa school. While the highly restricted interest naman is sobra yung focus sa isang bagay. Like, di ba may mga bata talaga na so pag na-interest sila sa isang bagay, sa toys or whatsoever yan, is hindi nila yan bibitawan. Sobrang obsessed nila yan sa mga ganyan. While the sensory issues is yan yung sobrang sensitive sa sound, sa texture, sa smell, or minsan wala silang nararamdamang pain kahit obvious na sobrang masakit na ganun. So, like for instance sa criterion B is diba yung mga bata is umiiyak yan sila kapag hindi nila nakuha yung gusto nila, yung ganun, or yung daily routine nila is nabago, mga ganyan. That could be an example of criterion B. Criterion C and D is yung symptoms is usually nakikita na before age 2 or minsan as early as 12 months. While the criterion D is ibig sabihin hindi lang siya simpleng napapansin lang na kakaiba, ganon. Nakaka-apekto siya sa school, work, or relationship. So, developmental and course naman is usually lumalabas yung signs before age 2, di ba? So, sa iba, nagiging obvious lang pag school age na. While habang tumatanda, some symptoms nag-i-improve lalo kung may intervention. So, with adults, yung mga adults na with ASD is high functioning. Minsan nagkakaroon ng work or career, lalo na kung related sa special interest nila. So, imagine may kilala kayong sobrang galing sa computer and obsessed sa codes. May mga tao talagang ganyan. So, pwede itong maging strength nila kahit na may ASD sila. So, around 1 to 2% ng population is may ASD. So, mas common sa boys kaysa sa girls. Well, pansin ko rin kasi pero minsan underdiagnose yung girls kasi mas subtle yung symptoms nila. So, we have risk and prognostic factors. So, first is, what is the things na nakaka-affect sa outcome ng isang tao with ASD? Like, kung may kasamang intellectual disability or wala, kung may functional language na bago mag 5 years old, or kung may mental health problems like depression or anxiety. So, kung may epilepsy is mas mataas ang risk ng intellectual and verbal disability. So kung may kilala kayo ng bata na may ASD, na marunong na magsalita at the age of 5, is mas okay ba yung prognosis niya kaysa sa batang hindi pa rin nakakapagsalita? Of course, yes, mas okay kasi ang presence ng functional language by the age of 5 is sign na yan na mas maganda ang magiging development niya sa communication or social interaction compared sa bata na hindi pa rin marunong magsalita. Ang environmental genetic physiology risk is ang environmental is yan yung na-expose sa drugs during pregnancy, while the genetic is malaki yung role. Malaki yung role ng genetic kasi 37% to 90% heritability. Pero hindi lahat nagkakaroon ng ASD kasi polygenic siya. Ang culture-related diagnostic issues is yan yung nakaka-apekto sa culture. Like for instance, di ba kapag sa US is kapag red flag sa kanila kapag hindi tumitingin yung tao hindi tumitingin yung tao na nagsasalita sa kausap, red flag yun. While dito sa Pinas is respeto yun, di ba? So, for example lang naman yun. So, yun yung nami-misdiagnose ng mga tao, lalo na yung galing sa minority group. Sa sex and gender-related diagnostic issues is mas madalas na napapansin nyo is mas madalas na boys ang na-diagnose 3 to 4 times more. Pero ang girls is hindi kasi hindi sila nahuhuli. Mas marunong silang makipag-social interact sa mga tao and mas nakakasabay sila. So, hindi agad napapansin yung mga difficulties nila. Of course, sa societal risk is yung mga individual na may ASD is nasa higher risk sila for suicidal attempts, lalo na yung mga social communication problems, yung mga may ASD na nabubully or whatsoever, na walang friends. Syempre nakaka-affect yun sa mental health nila. So, mas mataas yung risk ng depression or low self-esteem nila. Ang functional consequences naman is yung children with ASD is hirap sila sa learning, sa mga routines or sa sensory sensitive. While the adults naman is hirap maging independent and magkaroon ng stable job. And at risk din sila sa accidents like yung mga bata, especially yung mga may ASD is yung kapag nasa pool sila, like for example kapag yung bata na is pumunta sa pool, 'di ba? Lumangoy. Ano yung risk factor dito? Syempre mataas yung risk ng accidental drowning kasi wala silang awareness sa danger kasi nga may difficulties. Sa differential diagnosis is yan yung may overlap sa ibang disorders like ADHD, hyperactive social issues, pero wala yung repetitive behaviors. While sa OCD is may repetitive behaviors, pero dahil sa intrusive thoughts is hindi siya enjoyable. Sa schizophrenia naman is may hallucination and delusions. So like for example, yung bata is hyper siya and hindi siya marunong mag-wait ng turn pero walang repetitive behaviors. So ASD ba ito? Or ADHD? Of course, mas ADHD siya kasi wala naman siyang restricted or repetitive behaviors na requirements para sa ASD diagnosis. Sa comorbidity naman is 70% ng may ASD is may isang mental disorder, while yung 40% is may dalawa or more. Yung mga common is anxiety, depression, ADHD, epilepsy, mga ganun. So, we have inattention symptoms. Unahin natin yung mga signs nila, yung mga madalas nakakalimot ng instructions. May mga taong naiiwan or nawawala yung gamit nila like books, cellphone, keys. Especially ako talaga, makalimutan talaga ako, nawawala ko yung mga cellphones ko, mga ganyan, mga wallet ko. So, hindi lang diyan is hindi rin nila matapos yung task nila kasi distracted sila. Is parang yun yung mga taong wala sa sarili ganun. So for instance, yun 'di ba, yung mga like for instance ako is pinagawa ko ng teacher ko ng activity, yung prof ko ng activity. Uh, pero me, kasi is distracted masyado, is nakalimutan ko na may assignment pala, may pinagawa pala. So, ang question is, kaya ba tinatawag na tamad or pasaway ang mga ADHD? Of course, oo. Yes. Kasi, yun ang tingin ng mga tao sa kanila. Yung ADH is, ang tingin nila sa mga ganun is tamad, mga ganun, makalimutin, while ang issues lang naman nila ay a focus at self-regulation, hindi yung katamaran. Hyperactivity and impulsivity symptoms is yan yung mga taong hindi mapakali, yung always gumagalaw kasi hindi sila mapakali, yung laging nagsasalita kahit hindi naman dapat, yung hindi talaga mapakali ng mga tao, yung hirap sila maghintay, can't wait, yung mga a person that can't wait kasi gusto nila agad-agad, yung mga ganun. So, hirap sila maghintay or bigla-bigla na lang sumisingit sa mga like usapan or sa linya kasi hindi sila makapaghintay. Mga ganun. Like for example, 'di ba? Like for example ako, like for example yung ako is nag-ask ako sa kaklase ko and bigla diagnostic features is ang essential feature ng ADHD ay inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity na hindi na-align sa developmental level. So, hindi ito dahil sa matigas yung ulo or dahil sa simpleng tamad lang, kundi neurological talaga. Ang associated features is most of my ADHD is may mga kasabay na challenges like delay sa language at motor skills or mabilis magalit or ma-frustrate and poor school or work performance or may low self-esteem dahil sa peer rejection. Differential diagnosis is dapat ma-differentiate siya sa ibang disorders like ODD, Oppositional Defiant Disorder, is mas defiant and hostile. Ang Intermittent Explosive Disorder is mas impulsive and aggression, while the Autism is repetitive behaviors, while the Tourette's is tics, not just fidgeting. And anxiety or depression is minsan akala nila is ADHD pero ibang root cause yun. Now we have a specific learning disorder. Children with specific learning disorder alone may appear inattentive because of frustration, lack of interest, or limited ability in your cognitive process. So, yung mga children with learning disorders is like dyslexia is sometimes mukhang inattentive, but the truth is yung problem nila is nasa cognitive processes like working memory or processing speed. Kaya kapag yung mga task is nangangailangan talaga ng skill na mahina sila, is nagiging inattentive sila. Pero yung mga ibang skill na kaya nilang gawin or hindi na naka-align or hindi kasali sa weaknesses nila is bumabalik yung focus nila. So hindi agad yun ADHD. Pwedeng frustration lang dahil sa learning difficulties. An intellectual developmental disorder, symptoms of ADHD are common in children with intellectual developmental disorder placed in academic settings that are inappropriate to their intellectual ability. So, yung mga bata na may intellectual disability, sometimes makikita rin yung symptoms ng ADHD. Especially kung pinapasok sila sa academic settings na mas mataas yung mas mataas kaysa sa mental age nila. So, pero kung yung tama yung level ng environment is nawawala yung symptoms. Kaya kapag sobra yung inattention or hyperactivity kaysa sa expected sa kanilang mental age is doon lang natin masasabi na may ADHD. Autism spectrum disorder, individuals with ADHD and those with autism spectrum disorder exhibit inattention, social dysfunction, and difficult to manage behavior. So, ADHD and ASD can look alike, but yung parehong may inattention, social difficulties, and behavioral issues. Pero ang pinagkaiba talaga nila is yung ADHD is may impulsivity. Kaya sila nire-reject ng mga peers. So, while the ASD is may social disengagement, hindi sila marunong makipag-eye contact, hindi sensitive sa facial expressions or tone of voices. So, tantrums also differ sa ASD. Tantrums happens dahil hindi nila matanggap yung pagbabago sa routine nila. While sa ADHD is nagtatantrums sila dahil impulsive sila or wala silang self-control. Reactive attachment disorder is children with DRAD. Minsan mukhang hyper or minsan sila yung mga loudly kung magsalita, sila yung mga nagjo-joke in an offensive way or masyadong or yung mga taong being overly familiar with people, with stranger, mga ganyan, pero hindi nila pinapakita yung buong ADHD symptoms cluster. So, wala rin silang stable relationships na hindi typical sa ADHD, kaya dapat makilala yung differences talaga. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder is yung mga children with PTSD. Sometimes it looks like na may ADHD sila because of restlessness, irritability, and poor concentration. So, it's really hard sa mga teachers and parents na they don't know na nakakaranas pala, nakaka-experience yung mga bata ng trauma. Kaya it's important yung comprehensive history. Like kung may traumatic event, baka PTSD, hindi ADHD. Depressive disorders, sa depression is poor concentration ang nakikita natin. So, ang differences niya is lumalabas lang ito kapag may depressive episodes. While sa ADHD is consistent and always present yung symptoms. While sa bipolar disorders is same silang may hyperactivity, poor concentration, and impulsivity. But sa bipolar is episodic yung symptoms and always may kasamang elevated mood and manic episodes na nagsistay ng 4 days. Sa ADHD is mood changes happen within the same day, but hindi ito manic episodes. So, it is important to note na yung bipolar is rare talaga yan siya, rare in children, while ang ADHD is very common. Ang disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, DMDD is about chronic irritability at low frustration tolerance. Pero impulsiveness and disorganized attention are not essential features. Usually, ADHD at DMDD is coexist. Substance use disorders is yan yung kung lumabas na ba yung ADHD like symptoms after mag-start ang substance abuse. So, need mo na i-check yung history kung dati pa ba may ADHD symptoms bago ang paggamit or saka lang valid ang ADHD diagnose. So, psychotic disorders is kung ang inattention and hyperactivity is lumalabas lang habang may psychosis. So, hindi ito ADHD. Ang medication-induced symptoms is may mga gamot yan siya tulad ng thyroid meds and neuroleptics na pwedeng mag-produce ng hyperactivity or impulsivity. So, sa mga ganitong case talaga is hindi ADHD. It is medication-induced symptoms. Sa neurocognitive disorders is pwede yan siyang inattention pero ito is decline from previous functioning and mas madalas nagsisimula talaga siya sa adulthood. So, ADHD naman is dapat nagsimula bago ang age of 12. Yung nabanggit ko rin yan kanina. So now we have comorbidity. ADHD is rarely comes alone yan siya. Mostly may kasamang ibang disorder. So nabanggit ko kanina na sa boys is mas common ang ADHD mismo. While sa girls is mas mataas yung rates ng comorbid conditions like ODD, ASD, personality, and substance use disorder. So ODD occurs in about half of kids with combined ADHD. So sa conduct disorder occurs in about 25%. So, we have comorbidity. Usually, yung ADHD, hindi siya mag-isa lang. Mostly is may kasabay na ibang disorder. So, sa boys, nabanggit ko kanina na sa boys is mas common talaga na ADHD mismo ang main issues. While sa girls naman is mas mataas ang chance na may kasamang ibang conditions like ODD, ASD, or personality disorders or substance use disorders. About half ng kids na may combined type ADHDs meron ding ODD. So mga 25% naman is may kasabay na conduct disorder. So mas madalas din na may sleep problems tulad ng insomnia, sleep apnea, or restless leg syndromes. So sa ADHDs overlaps din with learning disorders, autism, language disorders, developmental, coordination disorder, and tic disorder. So, kaya kapag may ADHD diagnosis, it is very important na i-check kung may ibang kasamang condition na nakaka-affect sa functioning ng tao or bata or ng individual. Ang other specified attention is yung may mga cases na hindi kompleto yung symptoms para ma-meet yung full criteria ng ADHD, but may impairment na sa functioning. So sa ganitong situation is ginagamit ang diagnosis na other specified ADHD. So dapat ilagay ng clinician ang reason, like for example is with inefficient inattention symptoms. Sa unspecified ADHD is similar din sa other specified ADHD. Pero sa unspecified ADHDs, hindi na nilalagay ng clinician kung ano yung specific reason. Like kung bakit hindi ma-meet ang full criteria. So usually, ginagamit kapag kulang ang information. And that's all. Thank you.